before I jump in with these guys up here, who at this point should need no introduction, but I will give them one, I did want to make a couple quick notes. First and foremost, with your help tonight, we've raised about $4,000 for the District of Columbia Brewers Guild. So thank you guys. And for this panel, we're also going to open up the opportunity for you folks, as well as the folks tuning in on the live stream at home, to ask questions if you guys wish. And the best way to do that is actually electronically. So you can use the hashtag BrewTalks on Twitter. You can text 202-335-0985, if you guys wrote that down. Or you can just email ask@brewbound.com, and I will get it up here. So if you guys have questions about the panel, ask@brewbound.com. Use the Twitter hashtag BrewTalks in your question, and text 202-335-0985, and we'll ask some questions to these folks. I left. In the meantime, let's get this panel started. So our featured panel this evening is with three gentlemen who I respect and admire, and obviously the man in the middle made it all happen, Mr. Sam Calagione, who I believe we're doing this again next year, right?
Yes, we are. Verbal contract. Verbal contract.
I had to get that in. I'll start all the way down at the end. Bryant Goulding is the co-founder of Rhinegeist, and also used to work with Dogfish Head. A former Dogfish header, so Bryant.
Proud of you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks. You guys are frenemies now. Thanks.
No, we're full-on friends.
Okay, all right.
Proud alumni.
Don't try to make that media spin, Chris, about us going against each other. We're together.
All right, hey, I'm just saying, frenemies. That's a portmanteau, I think is what they call it. All right, I'll stop babbling. In the middle, Sam Calagione, the founder of Dogfish Head, and an icon in the beer industry. And to my immediate left, Mr. David Walker, a returning guest to the Brew Talks program here at CBC, and the best accent in the building, I believe.
And this is the first panel I've ever been on where I've felt so short, and I'm 6'8". How tall are you guys?
I'm not gonna say the joke I had, but
I'm 103 pounds.
yeah.
Okay, there's that.
Soaking wet. All right, so in all seriousness, all three of these guys understand the next wave or understand that the next wave of the craft beer revolution is upon us. And they're each setting their companies up in different ways for that next evolution. And so what we're going to examine today is the impact a rapidly changing and increasingly more competitive segment is having on the 5,300 craft businesses that are out there today. Together, Sam, David, and Bryant will discuss the maturation of the craft category, the evolution of their businesses, and the challenges of balancing the soul that a craft brewery was founded upon with the need for more sophisticated business practices. I know this is something that is near and dear to Sam's heart. There are a lot of reasons why everyone gets into this business, and most people get into this business for similar reasons, which is that you guys enjoy making really high-quality products. You enjoy the business that you're in. You enjoy brewing and being a part of your communities. But as you grow, there are certain levels of need that each of the businesses takes on, whether that's a capital need or a sales need or a marketing need. And the business is changing, and those needs, I think are becoming more prevalent. And these three guys up here certainly have a distinct familiarity with what it takes to work through that process and still maintain the ideals that their companies were founded upon, that soul that we talk about. So let's dive right in. I'll pose the million-dollar question of the week. Is it last call for craft beer? Is the reckoning upon us? I'll start with Bryant.
No, it's not. I don't feel like it is. I don't feel like that's what I see out there. There's been a lot of growth that was in the industry a few years ago that's now with the big boys. And I think that shadow effect has pulled away numbers that make our growth, which it is now different. It's the big guys and not BA Craft. But I don't think people's habits have changed behaviorally. I was just hanging out with all my high school buddies last weekend in San Diego, and we were chasing breweries around and drinking a lot of delicious beer. So I think it's a fun thing for the media to focus on, is any sort of slowdown. But I also think that sizably, the brewers that I talk to are seeing a lot of growth out there, and we're hoping to grow this year sizably with penetration. I feel like more and more people are still coming into the fold. The way that once you start drinking great coffee, I don't think you turn back to Maxwell House or Folgers.
Yeah. Nice. Sam, your thoughts? I mean, certainly the headlines would indicate that growth is slowing. Some of that is, obviously because the category itself has gotten so large that some of those slower growth trends are going to be a bit normal. So is it normalizing or is it slowing? What are your thoughts on some of the doom and gloom that's out there lately?
Yeah, I mean, no one can deny that it's slowing, but in terms of it being this precipice that we fall off of, I think that's, again, media fabrication. I'd also say I'd be way more concerned if after the very, I think, righteous and appropriate words of Bob Pease and Rob Todd this morning of shit's getting real, if that was greeted by our community of, like, let's run out in the streets and smoke crack to forget our problems, what a mess it is, that would give me concern. But the fact that this event is sold out, and basically these are the people that are going to make sure indie craft does not go away, and we're here to learn from each other, and that first panel was awesome. This is what gives me hope. And I know, speaking for a bunch of the craft brewers in the room, we didn't get into this for an easy ride. We got into this to rage against the machine and create our own brands that resonate. And now's the time to rage against the machine.
Yeah. David, how are you raging against the machine?
I'm raging. I think, as I said, I think this is the golden age for craft brewers. I mean, if you're a brewer and you're under 20,000 barrels at the moment, life is as sweet as it's ever been. I mean, when we all started, especially when Sam and I started, we couldn't find wholesalers, we couldn't find customers, we couldn't find retailers. I mean, it was really friggin' difficult. Today, you have this beautiful, fertile customer. You've actually got sort of a three-tier system that's somewhat easier than it used to be. I mean, when we started, we had August Busch bearing down on wholesalers, telling them they couldn't talk to us. So now you got wholesalers sort of crawling out of your closet to shake your hand. I mean, this is the golden age for craft brewers, and for people to feel it's anything other than that, I think they missed what happened 10 years ago. And I think ultimately, the great thing is it's good for everybody because, I mean, Rob, quite rightly, it was a call to action at the BA today, and it was like, everybody's got to go out and talk about being sort of small and independent and so on and so forth. I mean, the 4,500 craft brewers under 10,000 barrels, what are they doing every day? Those guys are screaming on our behalf. I mean, they're not talking about football scores. I mean, they're talking about beautiful breweries, their brewery, their beer, why it's different. And so I think that narrative is out there.
Yeah, certainly a lot to unpack there. Let's start with Rob's comments earlier today. This idea that if you just go out and talk to the media or talk to your communities or talk to your drinkers about the importance of being an indie brewer, that somehow that's going to continue to fuel the growth of craft beer. Is that enough, you think? And what more should companies be doing to continue thriving in a space that is getting more mature and is getting more competitive? And kick it back down to Bryant for that.
I think one of the things that we are lucky enough to do, and this maybe I end running the question, but we are allowed to self-distribute in Ohio. 60% of our sales are self-distribution, and I think the appearance and what we do every day to go win business and deliver the beer and to have people smiling and high-fiving people as they drop kegs off or talk about the beers we're working on back at the brewery and create excitement and kind of deliver the human element to people as they make choices, I think is a critical piece of things. What was the question again? Briefly.
Is talking about the importance of being an indie brewer going to be enough to sustain the 5,300 plus breweries as the category matures and gets more competitive?
Well, I think a big piece of the ingredient of our growth has been that intimacy and that personal connection. And I think that independence and the hands-on relationship that we have as ownership with employees day in, day out, and with our employees, with our customers, and with our retailers, I think is really critical. And the more we can tell that story about how working for a brewery is a great place to be and how you're empowered and invested in as a human, as an employee, I think that can be a really powerful message.
Sam?
Yeah, I mean, speaking more, specifically to the BA's, the mission to promote and protect America's indie small craft brewers. I do think it's relevant, and sometimes, as I travel and do events, and I have that discussion with folks, and it's not everybody needs to politicize their beer choices the way us that are deep in the industry do, and so you can understand the reflexive instinct to say, it's an IPA, wow, that one's $3 cheaper, it's still good, I'm going to have that $3 cheaper IPA. But at the end of the day, if all the beers that right now look pretty diverse and dynamic come from fewer and fewer companies, pretty soon the diversity is going to be swept out of our industry, and we're going to be back to a pretty monochromatic beer world. I'm sure when whichever global conglomerate back in the day bought Ballantine's, they told Mr. Ballantine, oh, we won't only just sell your Ballantine lager, we'll sell your wood-aged Burton Ale, and we'll sell your Ballantine IPA. We're all about your brand and supporting it. And then as that one got consumed by a global conglomerate, what happened to that brand? I think that's a reality. So I think consumers at least need to know whether they choose to politicize their beer choices or just choose the cheapest IPA. That's up to them. But they at least need to know where their beer is coming from.
Yeah, and you bring up the issue, I think, of where the beer is being consumed. So some of that might be constrained at some of your more traditional outlets. Sure, you walk into an airport and you see, if we're talking about Anheuser-Busch, you see a Goose Island and a Golden Road and an Elysian and a Stella and a Bud all on tap, and it all comes from one company. But there are outlets where craft brewers can still succeed. So, do you feel that it'll be the I guess more mainstream outlets that are affected most by some of that consolidation, or will it be the entire marketplace?
David, you want to start?
Yeah, so I think the independent thing is powerful. I don't think it's a platform long term. I mean, I think it's only got, it's one of a number of dimensions. But, when I walk through an airport and I skim all the beers, when I skim the wines, when I skim the hot dogs, I sort of they're all part of the same tribe to me. I don't need someone to come up and inform me of the provenance of the hot dog or the wine or, frankly, the beer that I'm drinking in those places. So every now and then you'll find someone will come up with something interesting. But I think consumers are super smart. I don't think they need us to spoon feed them as to what is cool and what is not. I think you can pull the eyes over the consumer for a little bit, but not for too long. So I'm not going to lie awake at night worried about it. I'm a brewer. My 21-year-old daughter brought home a six-pack of Blue Moon once, and I had to sit her down and talk to her about what was going on there. And, but you know what I mean? It's she should know better, but she didn't. So the point that I'm making is I don't lie awake at night worried about those things.
What do you lie awake at night worrying about? Not that I want to think about you lying awake at night.
That's hot.
Let's not go there, okay? I tell you what I lie awake. We and I'm sure you guys are saying we employ 450 people. It's weird. When we employed 20 people, I didn't used to lie awake at night. 450 people is a lot of people. There's a community and there's a family there and there's the decisions you make are important. So yeah, that's what keeps me awake at night. And that's an arc and an evolution that craft brewers that as they grow, you have to sort of add that into the sauce. It's not just about this and this anymore. It's about the greater thing that's going on with the people who've been with you for 20 years.
Yeah, and certainly as you grow and jump up to the next rung of the step ladder there, the risk increases, and especially in a more mature market like the one we're dealing with today. Sam, as you think about how the market has evolved in even the last year or two, what are the most noticeable signs that the market is maturing, and how has Dogfish sort of felt the effects of a competitive and more mature marketplace now?
Well, and I've had a wonderful 2 days. I'm at a CBC where I really haven't left a room that has no windows. The last 48 hours, myself and the sales leadership team have been locked in a room in wonderful discussions with our distributors, and we've had a lot of great successes to share with so many of those distributors. And I would say the shit's getting real. We're all acknowledging that, but this has been the most enjoyable start to a year for me in half a decade, because I feel like the distributors have very clear asks. We still have to keep giving the consumers what they want. They want creativity, they want diversity, they want innovation, they want new. But we need to really get better, regardless of the scale of the brewery, at giving the distributors and the retailers what they need. So while they might say, we want craziness and diversity and da-da-da-da-da, I think we're all finding as a family in the 3-tier of distributors, retailers, and brewers that we better focus on giving the consumer what they want and staying diverse and creative and crazy, but we got to get our shit dialed in to give the distributors and the retailers what they need. And in summarizing what they need, it's a lot of different Ps. They need great portfolio with really clear messaging on what the priorities are of that portfolio, regardless of the scale of the brewery. And also, there's only one global conglomerate that can deliver, I feel, a model that is based on pulling margin out and just commodifying the beer. So the other P we need to focus on is convincing our distributors why profitability helps us move up their totem pole of priorities. And I've enjoyed this journey. We've tripled our sales department in 18 months, and getting to know the people working at our company along with the distributors that are stepping up has been a really profound reward for me. So I'm enjoying the journey.
So you've tripled your sales department. Have you tripled your sales as well? And do you even need to triple your sales in order to...
That's a great question. I mean, again, shit's getting real up there. We're up 5.1% in our existing markets, another 2% in new markets. So we're up 7.1-ish% year to date, and tripled our sales force. We didn't triple our sales. So obviously, Mariah and I chose to say, okay, look at this environment right now. Shit's getting real. It's tumultuous. We're going to take a hit to our OP to invest in our brand by bringing these amazing people in to help us. But instead of taking a hit to OP that affects the distributor, i.e. discounting or cheapening our beer, let's take this hit to us to keep the distributor's margins real by not having a discount, and hopefully that in itself will help raise us as a priority in their houses.
Yeah, and Bryant, you and I have talked about this a lot, but just the idea of talent, that's the talent that is needed to operate a successful craft brewery in today's environment, and retaining that talent. It's something that you guys focus on a lot at Rhinegeist. How are you guys kind of moving through a at times confusing and cluttered craft environment with a new-ish brand, 4 years old now?
Yeah, not quite.
Yeah, so how do you do that?
Well, I was in a different era 6 years ago. I had 5 states for Dogfish Head, and it was a dream job, and I got to fly all over the West Coast, and for a kid from Connecticut, that was fantastic.
Single kid from Connecticut,
yes. It's quite enjoyable. Continuously hop the shit out of the West Coast. But I also felt the limitations of being spread so thin. Las Vegas can take a lot out of you, so can San Diego and Portland and all those great places. But when we started to open the brewery, we looked for, I think my background was in consulting, and that was a system and a job where you delivered something to people that they may or may not ever take, and then you moved on to something else. They may implement it, they may not, and it was really completely dissatisfying, and you were working your ass off 60 plus hours a week, and it never added up to anything. So I think when I got into the beer business and saw this very meritocratic, warm, enjoyable environment filled with people that really were passionate about their craft and working just as hard, but also kind of giving each other bear hugs and showing each other innovation, I was really spoiled and excited, and I think that was a huge aha for me, because I love beer so much and I love the camaraderie, that I could really attack it. And so when we've been looking for people, we've frankly been looking outside the beer world. Once you find out how easy it is to sell beer, and you make a relationship and there's momentum, it sells itself. And you may not have to show up in that account for a while, and I think that is changing. But when you take someone that loves beer, like goes to their job day in, day out, and loves beer on the weekends and talks to all their friends and trades, and you plug them into a job where they're selling it, all of a sudden, like, that passion turns into fuel. And that's what happened for me. And I think we've hired school teachers, solar panel installers, kids out of college, and had varying degrees of success, most of them working with how excited they are to sell beer. And I think getting that talent has been one thing, and we've been really hands-on. We didn't have an HR until recently, when we now have just over 200 employees, and there are problems with existing employees, but the source and acquisition prospect we've been really hands-on about, because it's really, really sensitive and really important to find the right people that are both going to make an impact and there for the right reasons, because that means their longevity is what you're hiring them for, and they're there to win with your brand. They understand it, and they understand the impact that they're going to make.
Yeah.
It's like Chris from the last panel said, I like that hire slow, fire fast. I like that one.
Yeah. Can you tell me why it's so easy for you guys to sell beer? Because I think a lot of people in the room would like to know that.
We're not even 4 years old. I mean, we opened up in a very thirsty environment and attacked it with an experienced team, and I think the timing was right.
So it's a function of timing and product quality and branding and everything. I mean, it's
right. Our city didn't really have a major player. Wholesalers were doing the bulk of the selling. Suppliers were spread out over many states, and we came in trying to do it ourselves, tell our own message. We trying to beat distributors at their game. Bought a van from Sun King. A side door kept falling off, spitting kegs out on the side. Yeah, the hippopotamus. But really tried to out-hustle wholesalers and suppliers in that market, which was kind of a blank state, especially compared to what was happening already on the West Coast. So I feel like we were a little bit more prepared for what was to come, because we had some exposure to it in tougher markets.
Yeah. David, one beer that you're also not having a really difficult time selling right now is the 805 brand. That's one that's on fire, and it kind of snuck up out of nowhere. Maybe you can talk about how that brand changed the Firestone business, how you guys had to evolve as a company to accommodate its growth, and where you kind of see that going as the entire landscape begins to shift.
Well, I mean, obviously it was what I call a breakout beer. There's 3 or 4 of them that are in the U.S. at the moment, and the rate of sale just seems to be more. It is a lot better than any of our other beers and most craft beers. In our case, it took us from 100,000 barrels to 400,000 barrels in 5 years. So, and now our other brands were growing as well, but it obviously became a little bit of a cuckoo in the nest. And there's obviously huge capital issues and production issues and scaling issues that you have to deal with. But as far as this conversation is concerned, it's sort of interesting. What it did is it sort of was sort of in some ways 2 breweries. We are sort of in the face of the big brewers now in California. And we sell 85% of our beer in California. So we have to behave like a a big brewer, so we have to come with the right weapons and tools and bone up on our bow hunting skills. I mean, we have to sort of grow up pretty quick in order to hold our own against them. Our wholesalers demand a whole different level of conversation. You know, it's sort of weird. When you're a craft brewer and you operate at a certain level in a wholesaler, you're really not accessing their real muscle. And I'm sure there's craft brewers in here that have beer that really has a high rate of sale in certain markets. But if you find the sweet spot within some of these wholesalers, it's just phenomenal to watch them execute. And I've had a whole new sort of insight into how organized American wholesalers are when you give them something that actually has some real rate of sale. And I sort of now understand, you know, why sort of driving at 2 miles an hour versus 20 miles an hour makes their bike a little wobbly. I mean, it's sort of you know, they're used to running at a different pace. Anyway, the point that I'm making is that we've had to sort of change the way that we look at things, purely from a sort of a sales and marketing business standpoint. I mean, the brewery hasn't changed. What's fascinating is sort of with the this huge sort of organic growth in craft and interest in flavor and beers, and you know, we've driven our brewers to be more granular and more innovative and than we would have ever been. And so we're sort of pushing the brewery in one direction. They're spending more time on the pilot brewery, and we're pushing the sort of sales and marketing in another direction to deal with bigger problems. So.
What's that balancing act been like?
Well, it's difficult. It's a little difficult, but you know what? We're figuring it out, but I can't say it's easy.
Yeah, Sam, have you identified a product or created a product within your portfolio that, you know, not to the same extent as an 805, but you know, similar to an 805, has really filled a gap for some of your wholesalers? And you know, the second part of that question would be how much sort of white space is left out there for companies to actually identify a new opportunity for them to go out and, like David said, execute and get behind a brand?
I think it's you know, limitless opportunities. You have to be more laser focused on finding an opportunity to get a niche in the craft beer world today, certainly compared to when we were starting out. You know, the white space, how many of us as brewers have done that? I got an idea for a beer, put the name in, the style, hit Google and be like, fuck, someone else already thought of that, you know? And so take, that's another recommendation for the newer brewers in the room. Make sure you take that moment to do that before you go hard at an idea that you think could be one of your flagships, to make sure you can differentiate and own whatever that concept and or especially name is that you're going to go hard at as a brewery. And for us, you know, innovation is in our exploration of goodness DNA from the first. You know, we started doing our fruit IPAs every year starting in '96, or the fruit first sour that we packaged and started distributing 12 years ago, where 1/4 of it got sent back to the brewery because distributors like, your beer went sour, idiot. So yes, innovation's still very critical to us, but what we're looking at now is way more focus with our distributors, and we have a 5-gallon brewery, we have a 12-gallon brewery, we have a 5-barrel brewery, we have a 100-barrel brewery, and we have a 200-barrel brewery. So while some of us are, you know, diligently painting Picassos with 60, 90 flesh and blood and sequence, other than us are doing some Jackson Pollocks on the 5-barrel systems, and both are critical to our brand's integrity and our differentiation in the marketplace. I will say, I've never once, so Hattie's our CFO, and anytime there's a check over 6 figures, we have to co-sign it, either Mariah, myself, or Hattie, two of us have to co-sign. And never in my life did I ever think I would see a 6-figure check for chunks of fruit at our brewery. And so when orders started surging above our ABPs with our distribs for both Flesh and Blood and Sequence Ale, I had a check for $110,000 come to my desk for limes and blood orange, and as I signed it, like, motherfucker, damn, that's a lot of money. I was also went to a pretty big brewery supply company's website, and I looked at what the equivalent for the barrel need rate for an ad would be if we just did a concentrate from a 5-gallon jug, that check would have been 21 grand. But I think the reason that our brands are surging is that you can taste what we're putting into the beers, and we're working hard as a sales team and marketing team to talk about those kinds of investments.
Yeah.
So those would be 2 beers. Namaste's up over 30% in IRI data. That's just a little brand that we don't pay much attention to. That just keeps fucking going. So
Nice. I mean, that definitely sounds like a challenge for you guys internally to just be able to communicate that message that, hey, this is a different product and here's why it's different. How have you guys done that?
I had some awesome meetings, like I'm going to call our friends from Amoskeag, New Hampshire, and Christian from Origlio today about that. And this is for all of us, really. So many great storytellers in this room. I'm on the stage with 2 of them. But that all of us as indie craft brewers, we're not going to have national TV ads. We're not going to be on the back page of most major magazines. So our storytelling capabilities, creating our stories in super concise messages that resonate with our distributors and are easy for them to absorb and then articulate to retail is really, I think, where the rubber hits the road if you're choosing to be a distributing brewery.
Yep. Bryant, you guys have gone at the category not with one specific brand, but a lot of different brands and really built sort of the Rhinegeist name up as opposed to a 60 Minute or a Flesh and Blood or an 805. What's that process been like? And do you ever envision a scenario in which you need to pivot or adjust your strategy to meet, the changing needs of a marketplace?
We launched 96 different beers last year, not including the bunk-sided keg program that spits out 4 to 12 a week locally, which is chaos and a tribute to kind of an entrepreneurialistic attitude towards what we could do and what we can learn. We have a tap room that we sell beer over the bar with, and we can explore different possibilities. We love exploring styles. I love to see what's out there and try and comb trends for what's interesting. And when we travel, we bring beer back and we drink it as a team and try and figure out what would we want to do. And I think one of the things that we've talked about a lot as we've gotten bigger is trying to get smaller as we get bigger and trying to be more intentional. Part of that's quality control, every batch, every step along the way. It's not the amount that you brew, it's the fact that every batch that goes out is true to brand and is exactly what you want, because you drink one bad of our Rhinegeist beers and you're on to any of the other beers out there, and there's too many. So I think that intentionality also comes into play when we're launching markets, and we don't launch a state at a time necessarily, and that may make sense in the future, but for filling out Ohio, we launched Dayton and Toledo and Cleveland and Youngstown and Columbus all separately and kind of rolled them out in sequence. And with brands, we've got 96 of them. Wholesalers don't want to learn 96 stories, and they're not going to. And I think the sweet spot that David mentioned is really focusing on the core and knowing what you want to do with those brands in the accounts that you want to make the statement in, and having the velocity and the supply to be able to fuel that velocity to then make your statement with the tastemakers and the volume, whether it be bars or retail, off-premise, and then focusing on the tastemakers that are wanting to spin off new beers at all times and want to know all of your stories, and breaking your business planning down into by brand, by package, and that level of granularity, and then figuring out who on your wholesalers team is executing along those fronts. We are growing. Truth is 45% of our sales, plus or minus, our IPA, and we focus on growing that day in, day out. It's one of our fastest growing brands. We also rotate through 3 different seasonal categories, which frankly, I sometimes have a hard time keeping straight which SKU is which. So and it's simple, we're 4 years old. We put together a sheet that shows you visually how brands hand off to one another. But we also build forecasts that we take a look at what's out there in inventory, what's on the brew schedule, and what do we need to brew next? Because as soon as we brew 200 extra barrels of something that we can't sell, we're looking in the rearview mirror trying to figure out, all right, where do those 2,500 cases go? And in between the first talk and this one, we nixed a batch literally happening now, because we did an analysis and decided we've got too much of that beer in the market, in wholesalers, and we want to keep this beer fresh. It's a hoppy beer. So we pivoted away from that. So I think it's a little bit about that intentionality and having people that are empowered to go the extra mile, make the decision, crash the party with their, hey, I've got a question about why this is right or wrong, and then making a move on that.
Obviously, very nimble.
Just sort of listening, I was sort of spacing out, listening to Brian, just sort of from the neck upwards, I was zoning in on you. It was, who was you going to put your money on in terms of his beer market? Are you going to put your money on a large, sort of very large brewer who's not as engaged as you are? I mean, this guy's engaged in an unbelievable way in his market, in his beers, in his breweries. And, for us, the minute there's a chill wind out there, everybody's like, oh, it's the end of the world. Things are just getting started. And, I'm going to put my money on these guys and our brewery every day over faux crafts or any of the other things that threaten, what we've enjoyed for the last 20 years. Because we're so much more engaging, intelligent, personable, committed.
Tall.
Some of us.
Are you writing his Bumble profile, or what?
I am. I was like, that's sort of cool. He was good.
Excuse me.
So hot.
Yeah. We need a craft beer Bumble. Bryant, you talked about this idea that as you grow, you're still trying to sort of get smaller, remain innovative, be as nimble as you said, where you can, in the middle of an event at CBC, decide, on a dime to, hey, we're not going to brew another batch of that because we're going to oversupply the market. That's something that I suspect you guys will grapple with as you guys scale, as forecasting becomes, a bigger priority and the needs of the business change. I wanted to ask each of you how you guys have seen your own businesses change and mature with regards to more sophisticated capital structures, brewing operations, really everything about the business. If you could sit back and maybe dissect it and point to a few key areas where your businesses have really changed over the years and how you guys have evolved through that change and managed to stay as passionate as you guys are today. I think people would really appreciate hearing that. So I'll start with Bryant. We'll
I'll keep it brief. We have less than a 4-year history. One of the things that we realized very quickly is that seasonal growth, I think, slowed down. And that may have been more entrants in the market and velocity wasn't there, or pumpkin beers were really hot for a while and then seemed to overheat. And what we realized is I just like to sell what's easiest, and I think our sales team does too. And so taking as much info as we can and feeding it back into that system was critical. We then have guys out there that when you're selling, you're not analyzing. And if you're analyzing what you need to do in planning, then you can't be out there selling. And so to balance that, we brought in some business analysts. We signed up for Armadillo, which is a fascinating data wormhole, which is pretty fantastic and illuminating. And it allowed us to take a look at what is our inventory in our wholesalers, and just to internalize that data to make better decisions on what we were going to produce, as well as make more sophisticated asks of our chain partners, our retailers, and we have reps that are running routes and are sitting down and doing business reviews with those accounts. And I think that's sort of, I like to use the term elevating the discourse. Like, you're sitting down with someone that is trying to understand your business better, improve their business by doing so, but hopefully we're enabling a retailer to make better decisions about their business, and then we all win. And that's the same person that is up there against other wholesalers, reps in accounts. And so I think we've just tried to make things more granular and also pivot. From growing really quickly comes at a serious cost. And when I was at Dogfish, I heard that a lot, but I've learned it personally. And when you're distracted on growth and new markets or anything but what's happening day in, day out with your brewery, with your beer, and with your people, then you're not focused on the right things, because it's those 3 things that matter the most in the long run. And so we've recently brought on Dennis, who was our original delivery guy, to be our cultural director. So we're a 4-year-old company with a cultural director that is enabled to create communication structures and feedback mechanisms with people to make sure that they're getting what they need and they can succeed in what they do every day.
Internally and within the 3 tiers, communication.
Well, just internally is his focus, but overall, we want to be the best partner out there. We want to be the supplier that's going to out hustle and be more fun and also be better planned than the other suppliers out there in a given market.
Sam, you've created a monster in Bryant. How's Dogfish going to go out and compete with this guy?
So I'm super proud of Brian's journey, and so I'm glad I'm on stage next to him. I heard him bring up the word focus a few times. I know I've got some of our distributors in the room that we've been in the room with the last 48 hours. That's certainly a big theme with us. And the evolution that you're asking for and how we feel it the most, I got to credit our VP team, our leadership team, who have taught Mariah and I the value of being more methodical and thinking more long-term, like a 3-year strategic plan, starting our next year's beer calendar right when the current year is kicking off. They've brought some just thoughtful, methodical approach of thinking about from the grain in, from the suppliers through what the distributors' inventories are. We as leaders are really learning the value of investing and making sure we got that stuff dialed in, and it's really paying dividends, especially with our communications with our immediate customers, our distributors.
How about for you, David?
Yeah, actually, Brian asked me, how do you keep it fun? And we have meetings now, and like regular meetings, and we're sitting around the table with guys we've been sitting around the table with 15 years. Some of them showed up and getting paid $12 an hour, and we're making big decisions and we're behaving like grown-ups, and it feels cool. And that is essentially the byproduct of getting to the size we are. I mean, you're not going to thrive unless you start sort of treating the business the way it should be treated. So in some ways, that's hugely exciting. I mean, it's it's a big part of growing to a certain size.
Yeah. I wanted to toss in an audience question that I think is relevant and kind of builds off the last question. Bryant, unfortunately, you can't answer this one because it's for companies that have been around for 10 plus years. How do you stay exciting and relevant to the core craft beer drinking base when you've been around for that long and you're not the new hit local brewery that's sort of the new kid on the block that's taking a lot of the attention? And I'll start with Sam.
Microdosing LSD. Tiny little doses every day, people. Keeping it real. 22 years. Really making sure that every day everyone in the company sees you're not fronting on how fun and important innovation is. I mentioned earlier that we have we have a 5-gallon, we have a 15-gallon brewery. We have a program called Small Batch Brewing where anyone in our company can take one of our Sabcos, which is what Dogfish started with. Our first year we brewed 12 gallons of beer. And now anyone that wants can sign up on a beer exploration journal with an idea. And it might be a busboy with an accountant, with a cellarman. You just need someone that's homebrewed before, and you can come up with a recipe. And I was so hoping this batch would turn out well, because a few weeks ago at our Beer 30, our Friday happy hour all company where we rate them, there was a beer that came up. It was a Goza made with snails called Escargots. I was so hoping it would be good. It needs some work. It needs some focus grouping. But the fact that shit can bubble up and us as a leadership team will root for it to be awesome and maybe go into our portfolio next year is what makes me think scale's not important. We're keeping that spirit of innovation alive at Dogfish every day.
If anyone can brew with snails, I think it'd probably be you guys.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're trying to affiliate ourselves with the slow food movement.
Yeah. Nice. You've been working on this bit for a while, right?
No, I just thought of that one.
Where's Mariah? How long has he been
Guys,
working
try the
this
60 minute.
Yeah.
Stay for the 60. Hey.
David, beyond 805, how is Firestone Walker staying relevant?
You know, the Edo 5 was the brewer's idea. Union Jack's the brewer's idea. Leo Viosis is the brewer's idea. Parabola is the brewer's idea. We keep all of our innovation in the brew house. You know, I'm not blowing smoke. The marketing department doesn't walk into our brewery and say, we're going to do this now. And I think that that's one of the few constants that we've been able to have as a brewery is that everything is conceived and the tone is set in the brew house. I mean, it helps that, you know, my near and dear friend and partner is Matt Brynelson. You know, I think if you have that nucleus, and I think, frankly, if the craft brewing industry has that nucleus, it'll always be honest, it'll always be enduring, and there'll always be a place for us. So, yeah, any decision, if it's not intentionally coming out of sort of an authentic notion out of the brew house, it doesn't make it. And the great thing about that is, you know, we've got kids coming into the brew house all the time, and they're bringing new ideas and new innovation, and so it's sort of self-sustaining.
Yeah. We got another question asking whether or not you could maybe take over for Morgan Freeman and just narrate everyone's lives. And I don't know that that's totally possible. So before I let everyone get back to having some beers and having some good conversations off stage, I will ask sort of one final question, you know, which I think is sort of what I led with originally, this idea that, you know, all three of your businesses are set up completely differently at this point with regards to the products that you guys are pushing behind, the capital structures, the partnerships that you have entered into. For Firestone, that's, you know, more strategic with Duvel. For Dogfish, that's more, you know, sort of private equity family office with L&K. And for Bryant, you're sort of the lone wolf out there, still indie. I'm sure there's plenty of people trying to give you money, and maybe at some point that'll become a reality, but who knows? I mean, if I had any money to give you, I'd be asking to give it to you too.
We're allergic to certain types of meetings. Yeah. Those are one of them.
But you guys are, you know, each unique in that way, and you're kind of moving through the space simultaneously in different ways. And you're now all faced with a situation where growth is harder to come by. It is more competitive. There's still this excitement. There's still this innovation in the category. But growth is harder to find, and the headwinds are blowing a bit stronger now. So in looking into your crystal balls, how do you envision the next, you know, 12 to 18 months shaping up? And how will emerging brewers like a Rhinegeist, as well as established brewers like a Firestone and a Dogfish, you know, continue to thrive in this crowded environment now that the money has come in? That's a toss. That's a jump ball.
What do you say?
All right, so I'll start. Yeah. So our Dogfish Head structure that you mentioned. So Mariah and I have always had minority investors in our company. It was back in the day when we started. It was my dad, the guy I built stone walls for, and my orthodontist invested in Dogfish, 110 grand, and we were able to get a bank loan matching for 110. And in every step when we bring in a minority investor, I also encourage other small breweries in this room to think about that opportunity when you can bring in an investor, a minority investor, who then has skin in the game. Their interest in actually seeing your journey to a positive place is very tangible. And in every case, we've brought in investors who sat on our board, taught us stuff with their wisdom, and then we've paid them a premium, and they've moved on, including my dad and Mariah's. Mariah's dad's still on our board, and he's probably my biggest mentor. But a couple years ago, when we saw our industry changing, so as we all know, we're in the middle of another tumultuous moment, as we were in the late 90s, when supply and demand is at a tipping point. And in that last era, the craft brewers that made it through that shakeout, in essence, all looked, talked, and breathed the same, a bunch of entrepreneurial, family-owned private companies. In this new era, we're not all looking and talking and thinking the same, even though our marketing would appear that we are. And we saw a bunch of our brethren brands that they chose to go on a different journey where maybe a private equity company bought the majority and the control of the destiny of that brand, or a multinational brewery bought the destiny and control of that brand. And Mariah and I said, we want to keep this thing growing as a family company, but it'd be really nice to have a partner involved that isn't like our parents who are entrepreneurs basically like us, but someone who comes from a world of CPG on the high end and has experienced growing brands like Calvin Klein and Levi's and others, but only has one vote on our board. And Mariah, myself, her dad, and we still control the company, but we have a lot to learn from them. And Jeff is L&K's in this room today, and we're proud of that partnership, but they know we're not intending to head towards an IPO or selling to a global company. We want to stay family owned, but we want to glean as much knowledge as we can from smart partners. And that doesn't have to be an entity like L&K. It can just be friendly, experienced business people in your communities as small brewers that bring experience and knowledge to the table that you don't have in your leadership team. And it's been valuable for Mariah and I with every investor we've ever brought on and then bought out.
Yep. So that's a little bit about the L&K partnership. How is that helping you guys move forward in an ultra-competitive segment now?
So they've been really helpful on helping us figure out, parsing what are the most critical dashboard components of what we're doing, the metrics that are really worth spending the most time concentrating on. And for example, we have a very robust bonus program that's very entrepreneurial for our entire group of 250 coworkers, where every month we're talking about revenue versus budget. We're talking about operating profit, because we know that is what helps us grow and add more jobs and give opportunities for people to move up in our company. We're right now looking for a president, COO. Frankly, not that quickly, because we're actually as an ownership and VP team on a really great trend. So we're like, let's not rush that decision. I think we spent more in the last 3 months bringing in potential president and COO candidates to visit than we did on our initial salaries the first 2 years Mariah and I started Dogfish, because we know that's an important choice, so we're not rushing it. So the wisdom L&K is bringing to that process, helping us parse potential candidates, has been also very fruitful.
Awesome. Bryant, as an indie brewer, as you look into your crystal ball, how are small, independent, BA-defined craft brewers going to survive what we've talked about as a tumultuous or interesting point in time here over the next 12 to 18 months?
I think back to when I discovered and got into craft, and it was due to a lot of the people in this room and up here. And there's something really palpable and exciting about what we're doing at its core. And I think the fun that we have and the passion that we have for our craft is different than many other pursuits. And I think it's so different that people will continue to choose it in the long run. And I think that is one of the key differentiating pieces. We don't have to have everything figured out. It's not gloom and doom. We're not going anywhere. We can take it on the chin. We could even not grow next year, and we would double down and figure out what to do next to best improve our chances to succeed in the future. And that comes from employing great people, empowering them to do great things, articulating your message. And today we're in everyone's pocket with social media. You can have everything that you want, and you're going to tune out those things that are inauthentic and tune into those things that you believe in and you want to enrich in your life and intake as nutrients for your lifestyle. And I think we have a badass, amazing time pushing the bounds of creativity, probing the depths of history, and creating an exciting product that frankly makes you seem smarter and enjoy the evening more than you would have without it. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we've got. And bought out by a big bank, I don't think those things stay the same. If you are really into Jaguars, sorry, David, you say that better than I can. If you are really into Jaguars because of how they drive and the history and the art of that brand being put together, and then they strap the new F-Series onto an Expedition chassis because Ford bought it, are you going to love to drive it as much? And I don't think so. And I think the exciting part of brands, and look at them all across history, I just read Phil Knight's biography. It's compelling. Nike, to me, as a kid born in 1981, was a global brand. Nike, to him, was discovering how to manufacture globally in countries that culturally were not open to that. And there's something really exciting and powerful about what we do, and I think intrinsically, if we keep our eye on that and not having to have everything figured out, or the sky is falling, I think people are going to continue drinking craft because it's delicious and it's great, and there are great stories and great people behind it, and I think that's my answer.
Awesome. All right, David, you got one chance to top that.
All right. Well, there's no U in Jaguar, by the way. Sorry.
That's the opposite of there's no I in team, isn't it?
Jaguar. So, yeah, I mean, listen, we started out as a family business. We are a family business. We teamed up with a family business, with the Morgat family. You know, we always said that there's only two types of entity that fund loss-making ventures: the government and families. And there's some truth to that. And you know, we've gone through a huge expansion over the last 6-7 years. You know, committed to $100 million of spending, and it's an unfathomable amount of money. You have to. It's reckless to do that in a way that puts everybody at risk. So, you know, we're in a capital-intensive business. We believe in the future of our brewery. We believe in the future of the beers that we make. We believe in the future of craft beer. I just don't, you know, just because we've slowed down a bit doesn't mean we all need to sort of pack up and go home. You know, I see nothing but a huge future. You know, Adam, myself, Matt, and Michelle have talked about a 100-year business plan. You know, breweries have real longevity if you set them up correctly and you do the right things, and they have principles that you can hang on to. And we're on that journey. I mean, hopefully we can hang on to it. But we are, you know, we're working through that riddle at the moment, and we believe that we're on the right track.
Awesome. Well, a round of applause for these guys.
Thank you, Chris.
You guys are all running individually unique businesses, and it'll be interesting to see how both the category shapes up in the coming years and how your businesses fare as well. In the meantime, I would like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. We, as I mentioned, raised over $4,000 for the DC Brewers Guild, so thank you for your support. If you liked what we did tonight, we have a couple more events for you guys coming up. Anyone who's going to the Great American Beer Fest or the National Beer Wholesalers Association shows later this year, we'll be doing similar events, similar Brew Talks events there. We've also got our Brewbound session, which is our full-day conference on June 15th. We'd love to see some of you there. And right now, let's go have a beer. Cheers.